Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar on leading transformation in a world of constant change. My name is Geoff Filbey, and I'm a trainer here at Provek. And today we're going to be taking a deep dive into this book. And it is Powered by Projects, Leading Your Organization in the Transformation Age. And that's out on Harvard Business Review Press. I absolutely tore through this book. And after you read it, you will never look at projects and organizations in the same way again. One thing that's very exciting about today's webinar is that we're going to be talking to and engaging with the person who wrote this book. So we have with us Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez, and he is the former chair of the Project Management Institute, current vice president of the Association of Project Management, someone who has helped transform thousands of organizations by embedding project-driven cultures. And this includes at Nestle, L'Oreal, Fortis Bank, and lastly, Antonio is a great friend of Provek as well and has helped us launch the AI-driven project management course. Today's webinar is going to be in two parts. Firstly, we're going to have Antonio. He's going to start us off with a presentation to introduce you to the key concepts. And then we're going to open up the floor and take all of your questions, any and all of them that you have. We've got a chat feature set up. You can put your questions in the chat and you can ask Antonio anything you wish around the book, his insights, his experience. And I'm looking forward to that part immensely. So without further ado, Antonio, good afternoon.
Thank
Hello.
you. Hi, good afternoon, Geoff. Thank you for the invitation, for the kind introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here with Provek, great partners of us with Ricardo Vargas on the AIPM. And it's always great to have an opportunity to share. It's not because it's my book, but it's very seldom to see HBR writing about projects and how to lead successful. So I think it's a great moment for the profession of millions of people who do projects every day. So thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for joining, either now live or later to watch it online. I have put together a few slides just to get us going. And then the idea is to have a bit of a discussion. We have about 40 minutes for exchanging ideas, and I'm not saying this is the only truth, but I've learned a lot with the writing of this book. So I'm happy to share that, and I think there's quite some insights that I got that I didn't know so clearly when I started writing this book almost 3 years ago. So that's already covered by Geoff. Maybe mentioning that I'm the vice president of APM, and I'll be in their annual congress in Manchester. So if any of you are there, it will be great to meet you. So maybe this is not meant to be a promotion of the book, more a secret or inside story on how I got the attention of HBR. Usually HBR, Harvard Business Review, Harvard Business Press, didn't write too much about projects, like I said, but so it was one of my kind of crazy dreams to publish with them. The idea was to just write one article, but then that led to the first project and many other articles and the second book. But just what I want to share is how did I convince HBR to publish? And the first one that you see on the left, the idea behind was that, listen, I know you don't publish on project management, but let me tell you something. Everyone that reads you, everyone in the business world, it's a project manager. The problem is that most of them don't know it. Even if their title doesn't say project manager, they're spending half of their weeks doing projects. And that kind of, oh yeah, you're right, absolutely. I can see ourselves doing the same, right? So that was the first opening. And 5 years later, before, because I had to pitch the idea. So I talked to HBR again, and I said, listen, now every organization is project driven, but most leaders don't know it, right? So that was like, oh, Antonio, again, you're right. Obviously, most of the work now is carried on through projects, but most leaders don't put the attention or the investment on it. So that's a bit the story behind. This is one of my favorite slides. It's very long term. It's macro, but I want basically this is what shows here. It's trying to, let me put the pen here. So in most businesses, you have two sides of the business. One is running the business. The other side is changing, it's projects, it's innovation. This is one company, so this is the amount of resources of one company. If we go back 100 years ago, 80 years ago, most of you, most likely me too, would have been just doing day-to-day activities. We wouldn't work in projects. What a pity, but there was no need for project management at that time. Very few people. But as you can see, the amount of resources needed to run the business has been steadily decreasing softly, because you feel it, that there's more tension between operations and projects, but it's not that you see it. You feel it, but you don't see it. And thanks to total quality management, BPR, outsourcing, ERP systems, what you've seen is that, yeah, more of your colleagues, not just the project managers here, your colleagues in finance, in marketing, in operations, in IT, they start to shift from only doing blue work day to day to partially doing projects. And in fact, I'm sure most of the projects that you manage, if you're a transformation leader, project program manager, you'll have a lot of people who are doing these two roles. They have a role here, maybe 1 day per week, 2 days per week, and then they have a fixed position. So what happens is that when artificial intelligence and robots will be very cheap to put in place, they will be working, there is going to be a very fast shift. So we're not talking about decades, we're talking about months, where a huge part of your operations is going to be taken over. And that's, I think, dramatic. It's going to be very painful. People don't like to change that much. That's why people are afraid on AI. And then what is left? So most people will work in projects, in innovation, product development, and operations will be run with very, 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 very few people. In banking today, you have more IT people than bankers, because the operations are run by technology. There's no really very few people. So that's what I call the project economies. The future of work is project-based, it's not operations-based. And this is a key question I always say is, you think that some parts of operations will be not done by robots or AI, but I think here is the question that you need to ask yourself and your colleagues and your bosses is, if you're doing the same work every day with the same people every day, that job is most likely to disappear in 6 to 12 months. So question that, because that's where robots and AI will come first. Here's another big shift of MR. The Dubai-based giant sent an email to all the employees, the thousands of employees. Imagine your boss, your CEO, president, sends an email to all you and your colleagues. Says, when you reach the end of this email, you notice something different. I have no job title. And from now on, you don't have either. Nobody in this company has job titles. That was a shock, but that's where we're going, right? Job titles is such an, I wrote an article in HBR, I think it was more like 100 years old concept, right? So why do we still use that? Because it gives you stability, it feels safe, but the world is in a different level now. So the question to you, who here has a job title? Titles are the enemy of speed, okay? Hierarchy. And this is the most important finding that I got in my research. And I've been chairman of PMI. I'm vice president of APM. And you know, these associations are always doing the best they can to help organization individuals to deliver projects better through their methodology certifications. But I came to the conclusion, if you're going to do like a large project, transformation project, cross-functional, cross-regional, with what you learn in this, with the tools that we have today, you will always fail. There's no way you can be successful just by running projects the way we've learned. No way. No. That's why the success rate has not increased, has not improved over the last 50 years. And there's never been more certified people, better methodologies, but it will never change unless you involve the executives and you make changes in the organization. And that I'm not sure is it up to us? Then you enter into academic, philosophical discussion. Should we or not be part of those discussions? I think so. But it's very different than what we learned when I learned and I got PMP. And now you just plan the project, you scope the project, and then you execute it, and then monitor changes and report on the status of the cost and budget, but the rest you didn't care. So I say a bit of a provocative is the organizations that we are today busy were designed for long time ago, centuries ago. The skills that we see in the job are mostly for last centuries, university, how we learn. And we're competing in the 20. That's why it's so challenging. So what I say is that what happens with all this? So the organization, the hierarchies, there's nothing worse than hierarchy for running transversal projects and transformations. They're not built for continuous change. Organizations are built for stability, but the world is moving faster. So that's an issue. Most of the projects are run top down. This is a huge mistake in the profession. We cannot run projects through silos and top down. I got it wrong myself many times. It's not. Executives, they love to launch projects. They think it's part of their job to launch projects, but finishing, that's another story, right? So, or killing them, oh, that's painful. I don't know how to kill a project. So that's an issue that most companies have. I'm sure you're in a company, almost sure, that has more projects than you actually can deliver, the capacity to deliver. I would say 50% of the projects could be killed and nothing will happen. And then the leaders, they love to spend most of their time in their comfort zone. What is their comfort zone for them? The blue part, running the business. That's why you never see leaders in your steering committees. And if they're there, they're not very focused on that. So that's another big issue, is that leaders don't like to spend time in their outside of their comfort zone, which is the transformation work. So there's a big challenge there. And in transformations, projects, programs, I think we need to stop doing large programs of 3 years, 5 years, big implementations of software. That's not realistic. All these projects fail. They deliver late, up on budget. We need to slice them. We need to work more on smaller projects instead of long-term capabilities. And then one big issue is that most projects don't have a team. Most of the projects are run by a group of individuals who are not emotionally connected, who don't feel like a team. So there's a lot of things that we need to improve, but the most important finding is that unless we change this, we will continue to fail. We will continue to fail and struggle, and things will be tough. And how I came to the project-driven organization, very simple. Once you see the picture again, that I started with the chart and this big trend, macro trend, you see that operations-driven or organizations were needed. We had them for 100 years. Hierarchy, specialization, silos, departmental, focus on efficiency, focus on cost. That was great. We reached a limit when technology became very popular and internet and e-commerce and so on boomed. And that's why Agile became very popular in the 2000s. It disrupted many of the old habits. Agile organization has reached limitations. You cannot do transformation at scale. Yeah, it really was very useful, some of these concepts, not just on the Scrum level, but also on the philosophy level. But now, naturally, the next type of organization is the one that put projects at the center. And that's what I call project driven, right? When projects become the bigger part of the business, where most of the value will be generated, and that's the project driven. And this is how it looks like. So this is the blueprint for project driven organization. You see three areas there, back again to what I told you. The green one is the organization. So there I describe how you need to change the culture, having one thing that is very funny is the success rate of projects is very, very low, around 70% fail. But we're not doing very risky projects on the other hand, because we're afraid of failure. So it just creates a very bad culture where we do incremental improvement projects that save 10, 20% in efficiencies. But where are these exponential projects, the 10x projects? You don't see them. Companies don't have them. So that's the culture. The hierarchy is obviously, there's nothing worse for projects than have hierarchy. So we need to remove that. I'm not saying removing hierarchy means you need to fire people. Very clear, that's a big mistake. Removing people is giving people other opportunities, giving them other roles, giving them more meaning in their job. The governance, why do we follow an operations-driven governance where you have a yearly budget, quarterly reports, monthly? The best governance in a transformation is the one that varies. Sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it lets go, and having much more fluidity on the governance. Then you have the leadership. So that's about prioritization. Some leaders don't know how to do is initiatives. What are the top three goals? If you have just everything is priority and you have hundreds of projects, then you're not doing your job as leader. If you're not able to cancel projects, you have an issue. As a leader today, you should be able to cancel in project. It's more easy to launch than to cancel. Resources. So we'll see more and more people moving out of that part-time role of one role in operations, that's the kind of stability, and one role in projects. In project driven, you have the group of people who work full-time in a transformation for 6-9 months, and then they move to something else, right? So that's and then performance management. I just wrote an article for HBR on how can we build performance management systems to measure transformation. And finally, you have the execution. So you have value generation, the operations you need to keep doing, but it's going to be more modular. I have some examples in the book. And then how can we execute projects much more successful? So this one, I'm not going to read, but I give already some highlights on what takes you towards that project-driven organization. One of my favorite words that we do really bad in general in projects, and I don't think we've talked about that much in our methodologies, is co-creation. Co-creation in terms of benefits, co-creation in terms of scoping, on WBS, when you co-create, you have much more mind. When you co-create, you have better ideas. When you co-create, you get the engagement of the teams. When you co-create, you have a very strong feeling of team instead of imposing hey, this is the new big project that we're launching. These are the benefits for everyone. We thought about the all, and now you execute. That doesn't work. Killing projects is something really important. Having leaders to spend more time outside their comfort zone. Exponential projects, this is a key one. This makes a huge difference. Um, Stop having long-term projects. Just have two types of projects, 3 months projects and 6 months. Longer than that doesn't exist. 3 and 6, that's it. Commit for 3 and 6. That's it. Yeah, if you want, you can continue, but it allows you to have more margin. It allows you to pivot. It allows you to have closing of project, killing of projects much easier. So anything beyond 6 months is way too long. Capabilities, this is where I spend most of the time. I think organizations need to learn to build their own capabilities to transform. You cannot outsource that. We've done a lot of outsourcing of transformation work. Some of my big clients say, listen, Antonio, for the last 20 years, we've let the consultants to do the transformation, and our people are doing just internal work. Say, I'm not very smart. If there's something that you need to do as a CEO or leader of your company, it's not AI. It's learn your company to change, to thrive in change, not just you or 10% of the company, 100% of the company. That's the most important priority you have in 2026, 27. And then the teams is a topic that I'm very passionate. So that's it. You see, you can connect with me here. So I guess we can share the slides, but just setting a bit in 20 minutes, a bit the ideas behind Geoff, the key highlights. Of course, it's hard to summarize all the whole book and the 3 years that went into it in so short, but I think I'm just happy because this has been resonated really deeply, both on the project program transformation community, but also on senior leaders.
Very interesting. Yeah, strong overview. Some interesting facts in there. And one of the questions that we had during that presentation was around this idea of not having job titles. So we have a question here for us along that element of your presentation. Can you tell us more about why job titles are the enemy? I'm not sure I understand when these these are people's behavior, psychology, safety, benefits, etc. So yeah, if we can dig into that, and I think it's talking to the non-hierarchical elements from your book,
Yeah,
the Bill Gore and
there's two
Associates.
elements.
Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly, Geoff.
Yeah.
So I saw Nicole the question. There's two blocking factors with the titles. First is that often it limits you. One of the companies that remove job titles, that doesn't mean that you will not have anything in a change. You'll have what you like, your passion, your strengths, your skills, your areas of interest. So you're moving to something a bit more fluid. But the challenge was in this company, the people had their job titles that were fixed, and they had thousands of job titles. It was all over the place. But then they realized that people were not working on their job titles. They had to move to a project. There was another priority. So it was not reflecting really the reality. It was 10, 20 years ago, but not anymore. And some people will say, well, it's not in my job title, I don't do it, right? So you pay me to do whatever I have in my job title, not outside. So that was coming in all these transformation projects. The second one
Mm.
is what you said, Geoff, hierarchy. So hierarchy means that you need to ask permission to the level above and maybe the level above, and that just slows you down. If you in projects, you need decisions almost immediately, the same day. If there's some research or impact analysis, to maybe a couple of days, but not weeks or months. So it's very important to also flatten up the organization, and you do that by changing from job titles to skill-based assignments.
Mm.
I know it looks scary. There's one funny exercise I tell the most audacious executives I meet. I say, do this exercise. On Monday, go to the office, call a town hall and say, this week, nobody has job titles and there's no hierarchy, okay? We're all the same. And you cannot imagine the few people that say, I want to try that, because that takes a bit more to the extreme. It was chaos.
Mm,
People felt bad, it's anxious. Just think about that in your own space. But then after 2 3 days, people started to group around priorities,
mm.
around skills. It's not completely anarchy, but it just led based on priorities, interest, and at the end of the week, the feeling was very positive.
It's interesting. So you were talking in the presentation kind of along the lines of only small projects, 3 months, 6 months, and then these projects are going to be run by micro communities. So this
Yeah,
skill base in which you have the right skills, the right knowledge in order to deliver value. And within those micro communities, anyone could be the CEO of that micro community. They're in charge, no matter how junior they might
yeah,
be a team member, they're in charge of generating
yeah.
value. They're accountable for the business case for that one micro community that will deliver these small incremental projects. I found that part of the book extremely fascinating. Got another question here. So, if organizations want to become truly project driven and build transformation muscle internally, why do so many companies still hire mostly seniors and almost no juniors? Isn't that creating a future capability gap?
I love that, Julia. It's also really a spot on comment here. I agree. I think juniors, most the ones I've crossed over, they're more more inclined into what I'm talking in my HBR book is building those kind of communities, working in small teams, having a lot of decision power, being able to innovate, to challenge habits and old policies. So I do think that if you're hiring senior people with the old mindset, you have a big issue,
Mm,
because you're not investing in the future. I'm not saying they cannot be retrained and repurposed, but you need to have a good balance. And juniors do bring very good ideas, and yeah, I think if you don't address that capability gap, you might have a life for the next 5 years, but not for the next 20.
interesting. I was wondering, since we're on the subject of seniors, juniors, you talk quite a bit in the book about middle management and
Yeah.
how middle management is going to transform radically with the project driven organization. It'll be much less about administrative roles and more about coaching, supporting, creating psychological safety. Could you just talk a little bit about how did you find that? What was it that you saw when you were visiting these organizations that brought that out, that led you to this conclusion of this realignment of what we consider traditional middle management?
Yeah, I think from the research, and I talk about a big Chinese company as a great model, which is called Hire.
Yeah.
They they do all these appliances, and they went from almost bankrupt so to one of the most powerful company in the world in this space. Um, and they adopted this model where they empower middle managers to and anyone to be entrepreneurs, and come up with ideas and give them more responsibility in terms of value creation and becoming managing directors or CEO of their own on small idea. I think middle management, if you know a bit the history, was there just to control how people do their work, right?
Mm,
And then companies started to add more and more layers on middle managing. So a manager was checking what the other manager was doing, and the other manager and the other. So it just creates a lot of bureaucracy, administrative steps, and naturally that goes against speed, against transformation. So I don't think they're just bad people, but they're squeezing the middle, and yeah, I think we need a different type of organization if we want to be successful in a
mm,
world that doesn't stop to change.
mm. Very, very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that whole realignment element and the evolution of that role, I thought was one of the really eye-opening parts of that book. Um, let's move on to another question that we have here. So it says here, great point about prompt decision making. Do you have some tips on how we can drive support the leadership to make decisions properly and understand how important this skill is?
Nicole, another good question. Um, yeah, I have tips. I think we've tried many ways to get engagement from senior leaders in our projects, and sometimes we're lucky, some others we're not lucky. Um, my tip, um, maybe it's a bit more tough, but when I use that, many of the things that I share in my book is things that I learned over the last 5 years of my career, when I get already seen the worst of the worst and say, now I have nothing to lose. And so what I do is, listen, either I have a good executive sponsor for this big project, strategic, or we should stop this project immediately. We cannot do it like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's your call. You're the big bosses here. But if you're not able to give me 2 hours per week on something that you guys said is strategic, nobody will believe that. So I'm not doing this project unless, and not because I don't want to, it's just because I know it's going to fail, unless I got somebody dedicated from the top. Dedicated meaning 2, 3 hours, half a day per week. And that was very scary when I did that the first time. Now I'm demanding, and I demand. And if I don't have it, I say better stop it or pause this project because it's going to fail. So I think we've been very nice with senior leaders over the last 60 years. It's time to be a bit tougher and take ownership as well of what success means for your projects. You all know what success. Which is interesting and funny at the same time, is we all know what we need to have for successful projects, but we don't have it most of the time. We miss many pieces. So now it's time to stop and ask for what we need. And we need a sponsor, we need a steering committee, and we need engagement, and we need to be tougher on that.
Mm. The concept of failure is quite an interesting one that you get into the book as well. So this ability to cancel a project that isn't adding
Yeah,
value and making those kind of decisions, those key ones
yeah.
that we're hearing about on the chat. Um, but I like the way that you talk about how in the past you said a good team was one that didn't make mistakes. That's a performing team under the old model. But under this new model, we're talking about a team that learns from mistakes, a team that
Exactly.
fails forward. So I think part of this decision-making process that he's talking about is quite interesting. Is when do we cancel a project, but also what do we learn from those projects that we cancel, and how do we input that knowledge into the next one?
I agree. I think that's how we grew up. If you've done projects for at least 10, 15 years, the successful project was the one that didn't fail. Whether it made the value or not, no, who cares? No, it's the one that deliver on time and budget. But um, and I think that's linked to that culture where failure is a mistake, failure is punished. So that leads to a company that is boring. It's dull. The projects that they do don't deliver any significant value, right? You don't want to take risks. And that's not how I see projects. Projects are to take risks. I would say half of your
Mm,
project should be experiments of, if you're SpaceX, you want rockets that go to space and land back fully. Are you crazy? Yeah, I'm crazy. That's what we need, right? I want large SAP implementations that don't take 5 years. I want takes 5 months, please. Yeah, let's experiment how we can do that. That's where I think we will play a big role, Geoff. And we are big fans of AI. We think AI,
mm,
it's already disrupting the profession. So where we can play a role, where we'll be able to play a role when AI does 50% of what we do, is in these areas where we are pushing the organization
mm,
to accept failure as an opportunity to learn, to take more risks in the project
mhm,
that we do.
mm.
That's where leaders will appreciate what we do. Otherwise, I think the future won't be that bright, right? So I think there's very, very interesting times for us, but we need to change.
We've got some other questions here. Some of this is about change as well.
Wow,
Here,
the great public, thank you. Tough questions.
Yeah, we've got a thank you here from Julia, so appreciate that. Keep that coming. And then we've got Glenn here as well saying, can the process work within a very structured, hierarchical government, public sector environment? I was thinking the exact same thing when I was reading the book. I was thinking this would really transform a council trying to build a new school or something of that nature. But how would it fit? What kind of barriers would you get? What kind of cultural pushback would you get to this sort of approach? So, yeah, there's a question from Glenn around how could this work in a structured
Glenn,
hierarchical?
yeah, I see your question. Great. Thank you for that question. Can this process work with a very structured hierarchical government? No, it will never work. Never, never. Um, Impossible. Um, and I think what I propose is that when you're doing a big transformation project for public sector, go to the leader of that organization, say, listen, we're not going to change the whole public sector. I'm not going to disrupt you, but please, for my project, uh, let's do some exceptions. Give me a fully dedicated team. Take me out of the bureaucratic machine that we are and put me in a different space or a different place or building that we can work as a team, that we can work transversally, that we can take our own decisions. I know there's a lot of policies and processes and forms and RFPs, but for us, just give us much more agility and lightness. And so you cannot change the public sector. You can change the rules and the heaviness for your project to a certain extent. That will already be really useful. So don't have that discussion. Not changing everything, just change it for one or two big initiatives. That could work.
Interesting. Great. Thanks
Thanks,
for the
Glenn.
question,
Good
Glenn.
question.
We've got
Yeah.
another one from Anonymous. So we've got, are there any new criteria you're planning on adding to the project canvas to support prioritization? So, Antonio,
Uh-huh.
just give us a little overview, if you don't
Thank you.
mind, on what Project Canvas is about. What does that do? What's that for?
Yeah, thank you for the project canvas. So the project canvas is a one pager where you can look at your old project. It's not a dashboard. It just covers 14 fundamental areas of any project. You have the business case, the benefits, the purpose, what we do the project, the sponsorship, the governance, the traditional aspects of a project, scope, time, and so on, risk management, human resources change. So in one page, you're able to align with your team on what that project will be about, build the fundamentals so that your project has the chances to be successful. And the reason why I created is that after 25 years, I noticed that there was nothing simple in project management. Everything was
Mm.
very complicated, lots of pages. And that's why we didn't get any attention from leaders and other stakeholders. Oh, project management, what I mean, that's bureaucracy. That's 50 pages. I don't understand anything. So I created that layer that helps anyone to learn the concepts of project management in 1 hour. It will not be an expert, but we can learn for the project. And the question is, I'm not planning to change yet the project canvas. I think it's still valid. There's two versions. One I created 7 years ago. There's one in the Harvard Business Review project management handbook. For the time being, I will not do that, but thank you for asking.
Hmm. Just, I had a question around Canvas as well, just along those lines. We were having a little discussion here in the office at Provek around it. While you were launching it, did you find any new interesting KPIs that you could measure a good project against a bad project and help make these decisions besides the traditional ROI, budget, schedule?
Yeah, I've just published last week some article in HBR on new metrics. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's about, for example, one of them is the engagement of the team, psychological safety within the
Hmm.
team, dedication, senior leadership engagement. So there's another, I think, mm, metrics that will give you better feeling whether the project will be successful than on time on cost, which doesn't give you.
Interesting. Excellent. We've got another question here. And this is around kind of what Canvas does in a way, which is prioritization, but this is more to the person. So, how do you prioritize your own workload? Any tips on becoming more productive?
No, great question. I think I try to start always with the most difficult task of the day. Usually in the past, I was just leaving till the end and it never happened. So it was just rolling over. One key tip is start with the most difficult one. And your brain will say, no, don't do that, Antonio, forget it. Just start the day easy. But then I noticed that after 30 seconds, my brain really loved the difficult tasks. And second, nowadays I'm using a lot of AI related tools. So that gives
Mm,
me I've trained them, so it gives me kind of much more capacity to build that. I found delegating is what you learn in the books. It's very difficult when you work on your own because you have the contacts with the people. So that didn't work so well, the delegation. But I would say start always with the most difficult one instead of the most easy.
Very, very interesting stuff. Let's think about AI for a moment in all of this. So, in your book, you talk about the micro communities, and these are self-governing, non-hierarchical. They answer for their own profit and loss. They answer for their own return on investment. They do short projects, 3 to 6 months. And I thought what was really fascinating is they have to generate value or demonstrate they can generate value within 90 days.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you fail fast, you fail cheap, and you move
yeah.
everyone to another micro community. Now, one of the big elements of that would be psychological safety. And as a
Mhm.
project manager, I think it's one of our key roles is to make people feel psychologically safe. Any tips for how to do that? How do you make teams speak up, challenge, feel comfortable, take risks? Any advice to project managers that are looking for these kind of soft skills and how to
Yeah,
apply
of
them?
course. I think, Geoff, it's start the meetings with that. Start the kickoff saying, listen, we're not going to talk today about the project at all. Forget it. We're going to talk about the team. All of you are important. I want that we create a team. We've never worked together, so this is the first time. But if we're going to be successful, we need to work as a team. And one of the key criteria is psychological safety. Geoff, you can speak up anytime. I will ask everyone to speak up, right? Or maybe you don't feel like comfortable to speaking. I will ask you so that I will not finish a meeting without everyone speaking. You can make mistakes. It's normal. Projects will lead to mistakes. I want that you take risks. Every time there's a mistake, just bring it here and we'll solve it together, right? If that's kind of just set the tone, set the rules, make it clear and show it. Next time it happens, just show it. Well done, Geoff. Thank you for bringing that issue. Let's think together, how can we solve it? And that's it. It's not that difficult. Most of the things I talk in this book, they're not that they're not difficult to understand. They're difficult to implement.
Interesting. Really interesting stuff. That's a very practical one to take away. One that I've never tried is you don't conclude a meeting until everyone in the meeting has contributed. Everyone has engaged in some way.
Exactly.
Then everybody is
Mhm.
prepared for that and they know they're going to be asked and they won't just sit quietly. It also brings out some of the introverts, doesn't it? I always find the
Of
introverts
course.
often have the best information in their head, but they
Often.
don't want
Yeah.
to bring it out. Whereas extroverts often, like myself, I'm extroverted, come up with the first thing that comes to my head. I will say it. And
Exactly.
then there's all these voices that don't get heard. That's an excellent way, a
Exactly.
practical way of bringing that about.
And you need to manage the ones that talk too much as well. Say, hey,
Mm.
keep it sharp, right? So everybody needs to speak. So that's the other end.
Keep it sharp. Well, we got a sharp question here. It says, in your book, you describe a complete recalibration on the role of middle management. Can you describe the new role? And how does that support what you're calling the PDO, the project driven organization, which is a central theme in your book?
Yeah, I saw the question. I like that. I think they become more like coaches. They're not controlling, they're supporting. They're helping you. They're creating those teams that will deliver. They become more entrepreneurs within the company. They can bring ideas, they can execute, they can run the business that comes after. So it's a very, very different role. They're really coaches. They're there to support, they're there to drive value. And it's so nice that the companies I look at, the people were happy. One of the biggest
Mm,
issues in the last 10 years, 20 is that people are not engaged at work. They don't feel like going to work. And if they go, they're kind of forced and they're happy when it's over, right? So
mm,
this model allows that you have more meaningful jobs, that you are happy to go to work because you see value that's being generated. You're not in a box. And and surround it around boxes, but you are somebody with a heart, with a mind, and some ambition to do something better.
Hmm. And speaking of support, the questions that we get around the PMO, what would you think of their role in this new way of doing things in this transformation age with micro communities, small
Well,
projects, 90 days to add value? How would they step in here and perform their supporting role?
well, the PMO, the way we know them, I think they will be dead in 12 months. Um, they first need to embrace AI quickly.
Hmm.
When they can, there's always policies that makes AI very challenging, but they need to be very, very open to using AI as much as they can. And doing that radical shift where they start connecting more with strategy, with value deliver, value creation. I talk about the chief project officer. I wrote an article about that. So you need like an office that manage all this value creation coming from projects.
Mm,
But it's also a big step from moving from where we stand today. So I think they are at risk for sure. But
mm.
the opportunity, the upside is that having a really extremely nice job where they become really the co-pilot of the organization.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I see a definitive role. If you've got a microorganization that's working on a project that is supposed to be adding value, and it's being allowed the freedom to fail fast, fail cheap, fail forward, lessons learned, they are going to need support, aren't they? They are going to need the right tools. They're going to make
Absolutely.
the right resources. You talk a lot in the book about one of the things that kills projects today is slow resource reallocation. So you have a
Yeah,
project that's troubled and it takes a long time to get resources off of that project. If you have an issue and you need to surge resources, it takes a long time to get them off of another project onto
exactly.
yours and bring them to bear. Whereas an agile PMO that's working in this environment, I think would be invaluable in order to.
Hmm.
Got another question here. I work in the public sector on transformation and agree with your comments. Would I be right in thinking that having your rules of co-creation, the project slash initiative of the learning potential, it being short term and incremental, the condition in place for fail fast, fail cheap, and prompt decision making, including the middle management, have sufficient benefits to be included in the business case? Or is it that we have smaller projects in a portfolio, which therefore do not need the business case approval rigor in the first place? So, still a business case, just not as much rigor, it sounds like we're hearing there. What are your thoughts on that one, Antonio?
Nicole, another great question, and I see we're running out of time, but I want to answer this one. I think business cases were making lots of sense, but they have been misused over the years, and you always see very nice business cases, and all the business case get approved, right? So, and we became experts at making business cases that shine, and you cannot say no. And the idea of the business case is that from 10, you should just approve one, right? That would be a good process. So seeing that now it's so misleading and misused business case, I agree with your second point, and this is why I recommend don't build huge business cases. We know they're not realistic. Yeah, work with experiments, more like you were saying in the comment. And when you see value, maybe you can look further about the investment and the return, but don't spend so much time on business cases because they're often misleading.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for all their questions and their participation. There's some fascinating insights that were brought to bear. Antonio, thank you very much. Just want to
Thank
thank
you.
everyone and the number of you that did attend this. Um, just as a last final thought, if you're interested in learning more about Antonio's work and putting these concepts into practice, into your own project management practice, Provek teach the AI-driven project management course. Now, this was developed by Antonio and his business partner, Ricardo Vargas, who also was the chairman of the Project Management Institute. So this course offers formal accreditation through the APMG and it's one that
Hmm.
I absolutely love teaching it. It is such an interesting class. Every class is a little bit different. We get to experiment with AI. We get to dig into AI. We get to use it on our own projects. We get to see the insights coming back. We get to think practically about it. We get to play with all of the different tools. It is an absolute blast to train it. And the added bonus is you do get a formal accreditation. You can show your
Hmm.
employer, you can put it on your auto signature that you're formally accredited in AI project management. So please feel free to go to our website for more information. And I'd love to see you on one of these classes in the future. Thank you very much for everyone attending, and hope to see you at our next webinar. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Geoff. Thank you.
Thank you,
Take care.
Antonio. Bye bye.
Thank you. Hasta la vista. Bye bye.